guys. Where are you going? Okay, so please, if you don't mind turning your cameras on before we start. Please turn your cameras on, everyone. Okay. All right, guys. So today, and actually this week, we're gonna be looking at the the reading section. Okay, we're gonna be looking at the reading section. We're gonna start here. We'll have 2 theory and 2 practice sessions. So the reading section, as you may know, it's the first one that you have in the test, the one that you start with. Does anyone here know anything about the reading section at all? Maybe something about the structure, the timing, or maybe a past experience of the reading? What do you think? What do you know from the reading? Okay, that's fine. That's what we're here for. So basically, in the reading section, you'll be being evaluated on your reading skills, right? Your reading comprehension, most of all. So you'll have to read some academic passages. Do you guys know what a passage is? Does anyone know? What's a passage?
Hello. It's like a small text, could be.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a small text, maybe an excerpt of a book or something. And yeah, so you'll be reading these academic passages. And when I say academic, honestly speaking, they may be a little bit dense if you're not so used to reading this sort of content. So they are going to be about things like maybe psychology, literature, history. Sometimes you have like the tough sciences, something about biology, evolution, history. You have a lot like fossil fuels or just fossils, things like that. So you'll have to read these academic passages and then you'll have to answer some questions about them. Most of them are going to be direct questions. So it's something that you don't have to like interpret the author's opinions or the author's like decisions or anything, but you do need to demonstrate that you have an understanding of what was said or sometimes implied in the passage. Okay. Now, how many of these passages are you going to read? You will have 3 or 4 of these sets. Okay, 3 or 4. Now, why am I saying 3 or 4? Why am I not giving you an exact number? The thing is that it's totally random. Every year, the ETS assigns sometimes an extra passage. So it should be 3, usually, but sometimes you have 1 extra passage. So you have 4 passages total, and that passage is not going to be scored. So in case you have 4 passages, that means 2 things. The first is that 1 is going to be extra, unscored passage. It's not going to be worth anything, but you don't know which passage it is. Be careful. It's not like you can skip 1 passage of them, and at random, they'll choose the one that's not going to be scored. And the second thing is, don't worry, it will be fair. In case you have 4 passages, then you will have a shorter listening version. So your listening will be even shorter than it usually is. Okay? And if not, everything will be normal. So is this okay so far? Any questions about that thing of the passages? Okay. Now each passage contains 10 questions, a set of 10 questions. Always going to be 10 questions. And as for time goals, you'll be given 54 minutes if you have 3 passages and 76 minutes in case you have 4 passages. Okay, that means that you have 18 minutes exactly per passage. Okay, however, they don't give you a separate timer, so you need to measure your time yourself. Okay, they are not going to do it for you. They give you the 54 or 76 minutes, and you need to see how you organize it, see how you manage your time. Okay, so any questions here so far as for the structure? Okay. So, okay. Now as for the tips. So there are some basic things that I can say. The first one is you need to know yourself. You need to know what works better for you. I cannot tell you what strategy is the best one. There are many strategies that you can use to answer these questions. Some people, the first one is to do the usual thing. You're just going to read the entire passage and then answer the questions. Like, for example, personally, that didn't work for me. What I did was I looked at the questions first, I read the questions, and then I looked for the answers. But that is not, I'm not saying that that's the best strategy to take. It definitely depends on the student. Okay, so you need to work on yourself. You need to practice, try to do one doing each strategy. So practice with one set of questions, see if you can read everything first, and make it in time to answer the questions and finish everything. If you are okay with time, you have enough time to answer everything, then you can go with that strategy. Sometimes for some people, time is a problem, like it was for me. So you can just decide to read the questions first and then look for the answer in the passage. You can also try to maybe scan the passage first. You can try to maybe read the first sentences, which really helps, the first sentences of each paragraph. It's up to what works better for you. But the only way that you're going to know is if you practice doing both and you see how good you are with time, how much you understand without reading. You need to know what's going to work for you. So that is the first one. Don't listen to somebody that's telling you, well, this is the best strategy. Just practice, see for yourself, and you'll know what is the best one for you. Now, the second thing is that in this reading section, you're going to be allowed to do a lot of things. If we look for how your screen is going to look, reading section of IBT, let's see if we have some pictures. I actually have a program I could show you, but maybe it's going to take more time. Okay, so this is actually how it's going to be looking like, your screen. So as you can see, on the left side of your screen, you'll have the question. So you have the questions and the options. You're gonna get them question one by one, okay? You won't get them all at the same time. However, you are allowed to go to the next one. So you can go next, how many times you wish. And on the right side, you will have the passage. That means that you don't have to memorize the passage, that you can read the question and look for the answer at the same time. And if you look at this part here, the bottoms that you have, they allow you to go to the next one. They also allow you to go to the previous question, and they allow you to review. So that means in this section here where you have review, you will see all of the questions, the 42 questions that you have, and you will be able to go to a specific one. So when you say review, you can go to the third, to the 10th, to the third passage, the second, the one that you want. Okay, so you can do pretty much everything you like. You can start in question 1 and then press next until you get to question 7, then go back to the 6th and so on. Now, my advice, go in order, answer question by question, starting with the first one. In case you're taking too much to answer one of the questions, you're going to look at your timer here. I don't suggest that you hide it. You actually have the option to hide your timer, but I think that it's important to look at the clock. Now, if you're taking too much in a question, then you just skip it. but don't leave it in blank. So let's say you don't know the answer, just say, okay, I'm gonna choose A. I don't know the answer, but I'm just guessing. And what you can do is in your notes, because you can have a piece of paper with you, you can mark it down. You could say, okay, question 1, passage 1. That is the one that I guessed. And you do the same for all of the questions that you guess. Okay, so that at the end of the whole reading, in case you have extra time, you press review and then you go to this one, the first question, and look for the answer more carefully. Okay, so to sum up, what I would suggest, first thing, don't hide the timer. You're not gonna notice how much time is passing by. Second thing, go in order. Don't jump around, starting question 1, paragraph 1, and go in order. Don't leave the questions in blank. If you don't know the answer of a question, you need to select one, even if you're guessing, okay? Because there's no penalty for a wrong answer. So you better guess, maybe you get it right. So no, don't leave questions in blank, and review only at the end of the entire reading section. So once you're done with the 3 passages, you can go to review and you can go to the ones that you've guessed and see if you can get it right. Okay, so those are usually the most important things that I could say. What do you think now? Do you have any questions so far? Okay, so this is basically what I just said. Don't skip questions, don't leave them in blank, don't jump around, don't get stuck, because that's just a total waste of time. One question is never gonna be worth like 5 minutes. If you're spending more than 1.5 minutes, 1.5 minutes, then it's time to move on. You should just move on to the next question. You can mark the questions that you're guessing. Usually the last questions require more time. So for example, the last one is usually longer. So hurry up at the beginning. You can finish a passage in less than 18 so that you can have time to review at the end of the entire reading section. Okay? Then no questions before we move on? Okay. Now, something I want to say is, from experience, the best way to, if you really want to get a good score in the reading, you want to improve a lot, it's hard, okay? It's harder than like working on the speaking or writing. I think that it's a little bit more tricky, more difficult to improve your score in the reading and listening than it is in the speaking and writing. But if you really want a high score in the reading, then first thing you need to try to build more vocabulary, academic vocabulary, and don't just try to memorize lists, okay? Try to read, practice, and when you're reading, if you see a new word, maybe you can check up the dictionary if you want, but just try to see the context of the word, and that's how you learn what it means. So build vocabulary, and second thing, practice, of course, and finally, know what types of questions you have. Right now, today and next class, we're gonna look at the types of questions that you have in the reading. We're gonna one by one, but maybe we won't have as much time to go in detail with them. You'll practice with Jasmani, but try to practice on your own and try to understand how it really works. Try to understand how vocabulary questions look, what the strategies are, same thing for detail, except, and all of the other types. That is my best advice. Okay? Now this chart here is showing the frequency of the questions, which basically, do you guys know what frequency is? Frequency basically means how many of them you'll see in a passage. So how often do you have one of these questions? So how frequent they are, you know? So for example, vocabulary questions are the most frequent ones. You have many of them. You're probably gonna have like 15 in the entire section. Detailed questions are also really, really frequent. So you need to know vocabulary and detail. You need to master them because they are the most important, the most frequent ones. In summary question, the last one is also very important because it's worth a little bit more. So I'd say those are the three most important. Now the other ones, you know, that you need them, you're gonna see them too, but they are not that frequent. So you'll have one per passage. Maybe in the whole reading you have like 2 or 3 of them, but the other ones you'll see them a lot. So let's see. Okay, we're gonna see the types of questions, and we're gonna use this passage here, which is officially given by the ETS. So it means it should be pretty similar in terms of structure, in terms of types of questions, in terms of you know, the density and the content of what you'll have in your actual test. We're not going to read because we want to save time. So I'm going to ask you to please read the title. Can anyone please read the title of this passage? Come on, guys. Can anyone read the title? Maybe Nicole? Could you please read it for us? You're on mute, by the way. Okay, I can't hear you. Okay, your mic's not working. Maybe were you the one that somebody said? Okay, Natalie's camera, it wasn't working. So maybe Sarai, can you please read the title for us? I'm sure you all read it by now.
The Rise of Teotihuacan.
Great. So even if you're not going to read the entire passage, the first tip is read the title. Okay, that's hell of important. So what do you think it'll be about? The rise of Teotihuacan. Probably Teotihuacan sounds like Mexico. So the rise, maybe the development, right? The rise means the growth of Teotihuacan. So probably we're gonna see how this Teotihuacan city, right? City developed or arose. That's what this is gonna be about. One strategy would be to read the first sentences of each one or scan the paragraph, but we're not gonna do that. Okay, we're just gonna see for ourselves. So we're gonna start answering question 2, the vocabulary question. Okay. So the good thing about these vocabulary questions is that you don't have to read the entire passage or the entire paragraph. If you know the word, if you have enough vocabulary, then it's a piece of cake. It takes you like 30 seconds. If you don't know the word though, then yes, you may take some more time. But even then, it shouldn't be that long. We're gonna see. Carlos, can you please read the question for us?
Yes, the word ingenuity in paragraph 2 is closest in meaning to A, ambition, B, sincerity, C, faith, D, cleverness.
Okay, thanks so much. So first thing you need to do, you see the question, you don't read anything, you just ask yourself, do I know the word? Do I know the meaning? Can I think of a synonym out of this word, out of these 4 options? So does anyone know what ingenuity is? Can you guess what the meaning or what the synonym is? Anyone?
Cleverness, maybe.
Okay. Maybe. Anybody else?
I'm agree with Natalie. D,
Okay.
cleverness.
Okay, great. So how sure are you guys that it's cleverness on a scale of 1 to 10?
8.
Okay, good enough. So if you know the word, I would say maybe if you're like 9 out of 10% sure, like 90% sure, then I suggest that you just choose the word and then you move on. Believe me, that time that you're saving here, it's gonna be really useful. So you know it's cleverness. You're probably right. Maybe you use the word, maybe you've read it before. You're 100% sure, then you definitely just choose a word and move on. Now, if you're not too sure, if you're like a maybe 50% sure, maybe I'm wrong or it doesn't feel so right, then the second thing you need to do is try to look for clues in the context. That's the second. So the context. Now, my best tip here, in order to know the context of the word, the first thing you need is to know the paragraph. You need to know what this paragraph 2 is about. So, okay, I'm gonna ask you to please read the paragraph. Usually you wouldn't have to read, but just for now, let's read the paragraph. I'll give you guys 1.5 minutes to read, and then we'll see. Okay, please begin reading. Okay, guys, have you all read it? Nod your head if the answers are yes. Okay, now can anyone tell me what the paragraph is about? What is this paragraph about in general terms? Um, mm, Natalie, do you know what it is about?
Yes, it's about I don't know how to explain. The difficult and of course the religion in the historical situation about Teotihuacan. mm, It's about that.
Okay, you sure it's about religion, Teotihuacan's religion? Do you guys agree? Is that so? Yeah, anyone with a different opinion? Sarai, what would you say? What is it about?
Well, I think it's about how they developed and maybe what happened with them, because at the end I talk about natural disasters and in the beginning ask what did it happen to them.
Okay, good. Yes, I think you're right. So one tip, my best tip, I think, to understand what the paragraph is about, like 90% of the time, if you read the first, second lines, then you'll have an introduction there. So it's not going to be like the intro to the whole passage, but every single paragraph, it's a unit in itself. So in the paragraph, you'll see that the first, second lines, it's called a topic sentence. And it usually has an intro to what everything's going to be about. So for example, we have this question, right? How did this development take place and why did it happen here in the Teotihuacan Valley? So that is basically the topic. This paragraph is trying to explain how the development of Teotihuacan, the tremendous development happened and why it happened there in Teotihuacan. And then they start listing they start naming a list of factors, right? They mention the main factors are, and they say the geographic location, the obsidian resources they had, the extensive irrigation system. Then they have the religion is one of them, yes, for sure. Then they say the historical situation, the ingenuity and foresightness of the elite, and finally, the impact of natural disasters. So all of those that I just underlined are the factors that influence the development of this Teotihuacan city. So now that you know that, you already have the context because you have understood how the word ingenuity relates to the paragraph. Now you know the bigger picture. Ingenuity, what is ingenuity according to the paragraph? So according to the paragraph, the ingenuity of Teotihuacan's elite was one of the factors that influenced the development of Teotihuacan. That is what we know, along with other factors, right? Like the geographic location and everything we've listed. So that is the context. And there you're gonna have different clues, okay? There are many things that we could say. Sometimes you have contrast. Sometimes they say, while Teotihuacan's elite was, I don't know, or what the ingenuity of Teotihuacan's elite was something that helped them. Maybe you have the opposite of the word and then you have another thing. So look for clues that let you know what that word means. And if you really don't have any clues, you just need to try to guess. So what can it be? What do you think? Is it the ambition of Teotihuacan's elite, the sincerity of the elite, the faith, the cleverness? What makes more sense? That's what you need to ask yourself. Not what is the answer, but what is more likely to be the answer. That's the only thing that you have left to do. Because if you don't know the word, then that's the only. So what do you think? I think that maybe sincerity and faith, they are not so much, like they don't fit there too much, right? Like, I'm not saying that they're not important, but like they don't fit with the other factors that we have. I think we have more objective things. So I'm just saying, maybe for me. Another thing is that you have this foresightness in here. Do you guys know what foresightness is? Anyone?
It's like a prevision, could be.
Yes, perfect. That's right. So foresightness has to do with the ability to make predictions. Exactly, to like see the future, understand what's going to happen, or predict what's going to happen, and then take provisions, as you said it. You can also try to break it down, right? Foresightness, it's a compound word. Sight has to do with like the act of seeing, and fore has to do with the future, so seeing the future. So you know that the elite, the characteristics of the elite were ingenuity and foresight. They must be similar. So with that information, you can also try to see which one it could be, right? Which one is more logical to you. Can you guys see another clue? Something else that anything else to consider? Okay. Well, if we don't, then that's it. Those are your tools. You have to go with the one that you like the most. So what is it gonna be? Now I want you, all of you, to try to answer. So Nicole, what do you think?
Well, I think it could be ambition, because at the end they say like Teotihuacans and elite for the of the late first millennium. So I think like they have to progress the Teotihuacan Valley. So I think it's ambition.
Okay. Although I'm not so sure if the volcanic eruptions of the late first millennium, I'm not sure if that's related to this. I think, since it's a list, they're not really related, right? Because you have geographic location, then resources, then religion. So I'm not sure. I think that they're different from each other. But maybe it does make sense, though. I think that the strongest ones would be like ambition, maybe cleverness too, because they would make more sense to me. But yes, okay. What about you, Natalie? What do you think?
I'm still with cleverness.
Okay, good. So you're strong with cleverness. Yeah, I remember you said maybe, right? So are you more sure now?
Yeah, totally sure.
Okay, good. Sarai, what about you?
I think cleverness too.
Okay, good. Now, Carlos, you already said cleverness. And you know
Yes.
the meaning, right?
I keep the.
Okay. So yes, you guys were right. Cleverness was the one. Like, for example, Carlos and Natalie, they knew the meaning, right? They were like, yeah, I know ingenuity is cleverness. So why waste time? You just go for that. If you're not too sure, you're like a maybe, then you don't have to like read the entire thing, but you can try to very quickly scan the paragraph and make sure that it fits. And then reaffirm your option. And if you really don't know anything, then you're more likely gonna have to guess between two words, okay? So those are the vocabulary questions. Make sure that you don't fall into the trap of, sometimes you also have to know like the tone of it, right? Ingenuity, is it good, is it bad? Sometimes you have things that like, I think all of them here are positive attributes, but sometimes you have something that has it doesn't feel right because it has a different tone. So that's one trap. Don't translate. Some people were like, in another group, they were telling me, I think ingenuity has to do with like being naive. And that is what it looks like in Spanish, right? Ingenuidad, but it's not. So careful. Any questions so far about this type of question? Okay. Okay, guys. So next one here, the detailed questions. Now, I really like these ones personally because they are really direct. You're gonna find others later that maybe are like, you have to know something. Like for the previous one, you needed, I think, a bit of knowledge. For this one, it's more direct. They will ask you to find a piece of information, a detailed piece of information that is directly, explicitly mentioned in the passage. So they will tell you something like, I don't know, maybe what was the most important factor that led to the development of the city. And if you have something like, the biggest influence on this growth was, then you just click on that. So it's a high frequency question too, and we're gonna see how to answer it. So let's work on this one here. Could anyone please read the question? Maybe who hasn't read? I don't know. Sarai, can you please read the question? Only the question.
Okay. Which of the following allowed the Teotihuacan to have a competitive edge over its neighbors?
Okay, great. So that is a detailed question. Now, when you have one of these, that's asking for something specific, right? What specifically allowed Teotihuacan to have a competitive edge? They're not asking you to infer, for example, like what can be inferred. That's another type of question. They're not asking for like an except type of question. So what is not mentioned? So something direct, something specific, it's a detailed question. I don't want you to read the options first, okay? Read the question, only the question. So which of the following allowed Teotihuacan to have a competitive edge over its neighbors? You read only the questions, don't look at the options, and you need to identify the keywords, the words that you consider are important and that are related to what they're asking you about. Can anyone tell me what the keywords could be here in this question?
Maybe neighbors.
Neighbors, okay, yes, that's definitely a keyword. Any other?
Natural resource.
Okay, but I'm saying from the question, right?
Ah, sorry.
Okay, you were
Com-
saying natural resources from the paragraph or the options?
Yeah, it's something related with a competitive.
Exactly, okay, a competitive edge. So basically they're asking what allowed Teotihuacan to have an edge over their neighbors, right? An advantage over their neighbors. Once you know what they're asking about, you need to try to identify those keywords in the paragraph. I know that right now it's a piece of cake. It's pretty obvious because it's a quote, right? You have quotation marks and it is even highlighted. So it's not that hard to look. Sometimes though, you have synonyms. Maybe instead of a competitive edge, you have something like a huge advantage. Okay, it's kind of the same, but it's different words. A huge advantage over the surrounding cities. Okay, so that I'm just paraphrasing, but it's still the same. So you need to make sure that you find those synonyms, those keywords. And once you found them, that's where it gets tricky. So far, we're all good. But some students, for some reason, they don't do that, right? They just look at the question, sometimes read the options, and they start reading the entire paragraph. I wouldn't suggest you guys do that because it gets more confusing. And I can guarantee that at least 95% of the time, when you have a detailed question, that's why they are called detailed, the answer is going to be pretty close to the keywords and it's going to be one sentence, something very direct quotation. So don't read any farther. If you have your keywords, you can read that sentence, the next one, maybe the previous one, until you find what you're looking for, right? You're looking for what allowed the city to have a competitive edge. Pretty direct. So if we read, they say, it seems likely that the Teotihuacan's natural resources, along with the city elite's ability to recognize their potential, gave the city a competitive edge. Now, do you guys think that is the answer? Gave the city a competitive edge? Is it good enough to say, allow the city to have a competitive edge? Is it close enough to what we're looking for? Yeah, right. I think it's pretty clear. What gave the city a competitive edge or what allowed the city to have a competitive edge, even if it isn't exactly the same, it's close enough. So once you've identified that, then the answer should be there, right? What gave the city a competitive edge? Do you guys know the answer? What do we have in the paragraph? Natalie, what would you say?
Maybe the answer is D.
Okay, D. All right. Without looking at the options yet, the answer we know though, it's the natural resources and the city elite's ability to recognize their potential, right? That is the answer from the paragraph without
Yeah.
looking at the options. Okay, so you need to make sure you know that. So you know the answer. It's natural resources and the city elite's ability to recognize the potential of those resources what gave the city this edge. Okay, so now it's the final step. You know the answer. You just need to find an option. Now you can start reading the options, because if you read before, then your mind can like trick you, right? Your mind can trick you into thinking that, okay, it sounds familiar because I read it before, so this is the answer. Don't read it before. Now that you know the answer, you read the options and you find one that's saying the same, but in different words, because they won't be so easy on you as to give you like the exact same thing in the exact same words. You don't have an option that says Teotihuacan's natural resources along with, you don't have that. So you need to find a paraphrase. So Natalie, you said D, right? What about the rest of you guys? What do you think is the closest one to our answer? What is it gonna be?
For me, it's B.
Okay, B. Sarai?
Well, I think it can be B.
B2, okay. Natalie? Oh, right, you said D, right? Sorry. Okay, unless you have changed your mind, have you? Okay, you have not. So B or D? Do you want to know the answer? The answer is actually, drums, please. The answer is actually A. Okay, so I know it looks like nothing you've ever seen before, but it is A. So let me tell you why. So first of all, why isn't it B? I know that this sounds really good because it has a word that you're familiar with. It has the word elite, and that's telling you, like for example, I'm kind of sure that the reason why Natalie chose D is because she saw the word natural resources. So she was like, okay, natural resources are the ones that gave the city this edge. So yes, it's D. And maybe you guys were like, they do talk about the elite class, and maybe it's about the presence of the elite, like without the elite, nothing would have happened. But don't just choose one because it sounds good. You need to actually make sure that it's the same as your answer that you found. So option B, for example, first thing, we don't know if they were stable or not, right? We don't have enough information to say that, not enough information. Were they stable or not? I don't know. But second of all, is that really the main thing that gave the city a competitive edge? I'd say that it's even more important than natural resources, right? That was the main thing. What gave the city this edge? The fact that they had these natural resources and that the city elite recognized the potential of those. But in option B, they just talk about the elite class, and they don't even say anything about the resources, right? So to me, it's not such a complete response. We don't know if they were highly stable, that's one thing. And that it's not complete, right? The main idea, I think, it's always going to be the natural resources. That's why you have this in dashes, right? They are between dashes because it's something extra, their resources and the ability to recognize their potential. So that's why I wouldn't choose B. As for D goes, I wouldn't choose it. First of all, again, we have this information that's not really accurate. I don't know if these resources were scarce, not enough information. I think they were actually rich in obsidian. So I don't know. And second thing, they are mentioning something that comes later in the paragraph. So it's kind of just like a word soup. So I don't know about B. I don't know about C either. I am glad that none of you chose that one. So this has nothing to do. It is mentioned maybe, but it's not an answer. So why A then? Can anyone try to guess why A is the answer? Apart from the fact that we've discarded the other ones.
Maybe because they talk about the well exploited and available commodity community.
Yeah, sure. So the focus here, yes, you're right, is the commodity, right? Do you guys know what commodity is? What's commodity? Okay, basically commodity is a synonym for resources, okay? Not to spoil it, but it is a synonym. Commodity means like the goods, the things that you possess, like the resources that you have, your wealth maybe. So it is resources in a different word. And readily available, if you haven't guessed, it is referring to the fact that these were natural resources, right? When they were readily available, that means that they were ready to use from the moment the city was established. They didn't create these resources, they didn't produce them. They were readily available to use, which means they were natural, right? Natural resources. And the second part, the fact that they were well exploited, well, that's basically what it means, right? The fact that they identify or recognize the potential they had, it is kind of inferring that they exploited the potential, right? So they recognized the potential and they exploited this potential, these resources they had, because the elite had this ability to see that, okay, we have great resources, we need to exploit them. And that is what gave the city this competitive edge. Okay, so to sum it up, first thing you need to read the question, find the keywords, look for them in the paragraph. You can have synonyms, you can have direct quotes. Then you need to try to find the answer, find what they're really asking for. It's not gonna be in the entire paragraph. Most of the time it's just 1-2 sentences. And then you need to try to look at the options and find one that is saying the same but in different words. Now, not all the time. Sometimes it's easier than this. Sometimes you have something clear, but you need to be able to recognize these synonyms, okay? And think about it. Think about the main idea. So what exactly is it that gave the city a competitive edge? The common traps, believe me, is one of them is when you have, there are many traps, you know, we can talk about this all day. One of them is when you have like a word soup, they are called. So they choose random words from the paragraph. Like, for example, they will talk about the Olmecs, for example. Where's my pointer? Okay, they'll talk about the Olmecs, the volcanic stone. They'll put it all together. They will say, the volcanic stone that was a result of the Olmecs' knowledge of tool making. Okay, maybe right now we're not seeing this, but believe me, this is very common in the test. So you look at that option and you're like, yeah, I remember those words. It's that one. Nope, you need to make sure that it's the actual answer. Another trap, common trap, is when you have false comparisons. Okay, this is really common as well. So you have things like the Teotihuacan's resources were, maybe we can write it down. The resources were more, I don't know, they were richer maybe in resources than this other city. That's another big trap, comparisons, false comparisons. Finally, things that are so far away from the actual answer, like this one, the knowledge of tool making, and including things that maybe half true, right? So for example, this is kind of half true. So it is true to a certain point, but it's not exactly the answer, half true. So recognize those traps. I know it takes time, but it mostly takes practice, because when you practice, you'll realize that you become faster at doing this. Okay. So any questions now about this type of question? No questions? Okay, guys, before we go, since we only have 10 minutes, let's do something that's gonna take us 5 minutes. It's gonna be a quick thing, a quick type of question. This is the best one. I'm sure that you'll like this one. But we need to see it too. It's called the reference question. I didn't find one here. Remember that sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't, right? 0 or 1 per passage, which means that sometimes you don't have any of these. So in this case, let's start with reading the question. Okay, so that I want you to know how it looks like. Carlos, can you please read the question?
Sure. The word those in paragraph 2 refers to.
Okay, great. So that is how this question will look like. Okay, grammarly speaking, I can tell you how the grammar works. So if we look at the grammar part, then this question is going to be asking you about a pronoun, and usually an indefinite pronoun. So for example, the word those is an indefinite pronoun, okay? And they ask you to select what that pronoun is referring to. So the noun that corresponds to that pronoun. So that is the grammar part, right? A noun is basically the name of anything at all. So the name of a place, of a person, of a thing, of a group of people, group of things, anything that's the name, that's naming a certain feeling, idea, anything at all. And a pronoun is any sort of word that can be used to replace this noun. So for example, the word it is a pronoun. If we read this sentence, if you are bored, a bottle of water should help. It's the best for your mind. This word it is a pronoun because it is replacing the noun, which in this case is the bottle of water. So the bottle of water is the best for your mind. The word it, the pronoun, is replacing the noun, the bottle of water. That's how it works. So they will take the pronoun and they will say, what does the word it refer to? And you have to say it refers to a bottle of water. It's that simple. I wouldn't really suggest you focus too much on the grammar because maybe you need to know what a noun, an adjective. You can, break this down. You can say, okay, are is a verb, bored is an adjective, should is a modal, the best is a comparative. So you can break down word by word, but you'll just know the answer, okay? Because this is really basic grammar. You'll know it because you know. So my advice, you read the question, you go back to the paragraph, you'll probably have the word highlighted, so you don't even have to look for it. And you read the sentence where the word is. So in this case, this sentence here. Natalie, can you please read it for us?
Yes. Over time, beneficial traits and characteristics that promote survival will be kept in the gene pool, while those that harm survival will be selected against.
Okay, thank you so much. So that is the sentence. So you need to see if you find the answer in that sentence. If you do, then that's it. If you don't, then sometimes it can be in the previous or sometimes in the next sentence, but it's never gonna be far away from that word, okay? Usually the same sentence. So now that you've read, what do you guys think? What do you think this word those, this pronoun, refers to? What is its noun, the noun that corresponds to this pronoun? What is that those? Look at the options. What do you think?
Maybe D,
D, okay.
traits and characteristics.
Perfect. Do you guys agree?
Totally agree.
Okay, that's perfect. So yes, it is definitely traits and characteristics. So you just know because you know just because. So yes, if we analyze it, definitely here we have an adjective, right? Over time, a complement, beneficial traits and characteristics. Okay, that's our noun, the subject of the sentence too. So the ones that promote survival, the traits and characteristics that promote survival are kept, while the ones that harm survival, the traits and characteristics that are harmful, are selected against. So the traits and characteristics is the subject, it's also the noun, and those is the pronoun. So you'll just know, I'm pretty sure you'll do fine with this question. As you can see, it doesn't take up much of your time, and you'll probably really like to have these in your test. What do you think about these? Any questions of these reference questions? Okay, guys. So I think we're gonna have to wrap it up here. Tomorrow you'll practice. You have your practice session. You'll meet just money, and on Thursday I'll be seeing you all. Okay, please before you go, don't forget the daily survey tool. It's on your screens. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great night.
Bye. Have a good one.
And thanks.
Bye.